Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to Storytime with Miss Felicia. I'm Miss Felicia, and I'm so excited to have you here for a Storytime adventure. Guess what we're going to do today? We're going to read a story about outer space. We're going to join two puppy friends, who get to go to outer space. Have any of you guys ever been to outer space? You have? Wow, what was it like? Were there stars and moons and planets all around? There was. Well, I wish I could have gone to outer space with you. Well, guess what? Today, we get to find out what it's like to go to outer space with our friends, Belka and Strelka. They get to go in a rocket ship and go to outer space. So let's dive into our story. The amazing true story of Belka and Strelka, dogs in space. I can't wait to find out what they do. Dogs in space. Moscow, USSR, 1951. It was a cold, gloomy night in the back streets of Moscow. Does anybody know where Moscow is? Well, let's see. Let's find out. A pack of scrawny, hungry dogs was rummaging through trash cans, hoping to find a few scraps to eat, when a delicious smell wafted toward them. Can you smell it? What is it? Following their noses, they found a man placing morsels of fresh meat on the pavement. Dogs love meat. Most of the dogs were shy and stayed in the shadows, two little ones, their noses twitching, bravely came forward. They gobbled up the meat and cheekily looked up as if to ask for more. The man, who was called Oleg, smiled. He knew at once he had found what he was looking for. So look, there's two dogs. They look like they don't belong to anybody. So Oleg went out and gave them some treats. And what is he going to do? Is he going to keep them? Maybe. Oleg was a scientist at Moscow Space Center and was hoping to find two special dogs who might be brave enough for a very important mission. The two new arrivals were named Belka and Strelka. They were given a tasty dinner and a kennel of their own. For the first time in their lives, they had enough to eat and a warm place to sleep. There were dogs of every kind at the center. Some were bald and playful. Some were snappy and growly. Some were gentle and well-behaved. But Belka and Strelka stood out. They were clever and calm, brave and obedient. Oleg was delighted. So these are two brave pups. And Oleg is going to use them for a special mission. What could that special mission be? What do you think that special mission is going to be? Can you give me a guess? Oh, it might be that. Do you think that they're going to outer space? Maybe. Let's find out. All the dogs were given a health check, then weighed and measured to make sure they weren't too big or too small for the mission. Belka and Strelka were just the right size. Eyes, check. Ears, check. Teeth, check. Heart, check. Oh, this dog is bigger than this dog. but this dog weighs just the right amount. After all the tests were complete, Oleg had to decide which 2 dogs would be chosen. Finally, he made up his mind. He gathered the dogs together to make his announcement. So which 2 dogs do you think he's going to pick to go on the mission? Belka and Strelka? I think so too. What gave it away? The 2 brave little strays he had found on the street were soon to become the most famous dogs in the world. Belka and Strelka were going to be space dogs! Belka and Strelka were going on a special mission to space, to fly all the way around the Earth, a journey called an orbit. So do you guys know what an orbit is? It's when you go full circle around the Earth or a planet. So when the Earth turns in one full circle, or something goes around it in one full circle, it orbits around. They seemed to know something exciting was happening. They wagged their tails. They were ready to start training straight away. So Belka and Strelka are gonna be space dogs. Isn't that so cool? I think that's super exciting. And Belka and Strelka think so too. When a dog wags its tail, that means it's happy. The 2 little cosmonauts needed to get used to how it would feel inside a rocket. Some of the exercises were practicing staying calm with loud noises around them, spending time in a special kennel to get used to being on their own away from people, and standing on a platform that shook under their paws. Look at that. Doesn't that look silly? They're shaking. They're like, shaking, shaking. They practiced again and again until they were finally ready for their mission. There was only one thing left to do. Put on their special doggy spacesuits. A red one for Strelka and a green one for Belka. Wow. So they even get special spacesuits. And look at their cool space helmets. Are they all set? They look like they're all ready to go into outer space. Launch day, August 19th, 1960. Finally, the big day arrived. The rocket stood on the launch pad, ready for blastoff. Belka and Strelka were ready too. The rocket shuddered, shook, rumbled, and roared. Can you guys shudder and shake and rumble and roar? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off! Then broke free and soared into the sky. Up and up it went through the clouds until it reached outer space. Belka and Strelka's great adventure had begun. So look at that. Look at that rocket ship. And this is the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa. They're going to outer space. What do you think they'll see up there? I bet they're going to see lots of amazing things. All was still and quiet as Belka and Strelka began their orbit. The ground crew watched on their television monitors. Everything was working as it should. But why were Belka and Strelka so still? Everyone held their breath. Belka and Strelka were not moving at all. Minutes turned into hours. It was feared the brave little space dogs had not survived the launch. Oh no. Why are they so still? They're not moving. What do you think? Do you think that Maybe they're sleeping? I don't know. Maybe they are. Let's see. Then suddenly, someone thought they saw Belka wiggle. Could it be? Yes! And then Strelka started to wag her tail and bark. The team cheered and clapped and hugged each other. Some even cried with joy and relief. Belka and Strelka were alive! Yay! Because nobody ever went to outer space, so they weren't sure if Belka and Strelka had made it into the orbit okay. But look at them. They're happy. Round and round the earth they flew. They saw the blue of the oceans and the greens and browns of the land shining against the blackness of space. Not even a human had seen such a sight. Belka and Strelka circled the earth many times until at last it was time to go home. So Belka and Strelka were the first animals to get to go into space. No human had ever gotten to see the earth from outer space, but Belka and Strelka did. Those are two special pups, right? As the spacecraft zoomed back into Earth's orbit, or into Earth's atmosphere, flames began to lick at the windows. Down, down they plummeted at high speeds. The team at the space station grew very quiet. Landings could be dangerous. So, look at the fire. When you come back from outer space, you're coming so fast through gravity that the ship catches on fire on the outside. But they make sure they have special equipment and panels on the spacecraft so that the people inside don't get on fire either. Then suddenly, a parachute opened and slowed the spacecraft down. Belka and Strelka watched the ground getting closer and closer. And closer. The rescue team was waiting. Thud. Can everybody thud for me? Thud. That's how they landed. They rushed to the spacecraft and flung open the door. Two little faces peeped out. Two little tails started wagging, and two brave little dogs were gently lifted out, safe and well. Belka and Strelka were home. So they made it. They made it to outer space and back. Within a few hours of landing, news of Belka and Strelka's amazing journey had spread all around the world. They were celebrated and loved everywhere they went. Pictures of them appeared everywhere, on stamps and postcards, on television and in newspapers. Even films and cartoons were made about their adventures. Everyone wanted to see the two brave little dogs that had flown around the earth. So now they're famous. But the story didn't end there. Not long afterwards, Strelka gave birth to 6 healthy puppies, and both dogs went on to live long and happy lives. Space dog gives birth to healthy puppies. Pushinka for president. Space dog's pups, Pushinka, given to John F. Kennedy, President of the United States of America. So one of the puppies became John F. Kennedy's puppy. That's super cool. Oleg was very proud of his 2 little cosmonauts, for without them, one of the most wondrous missions of all might never have taken place. Belka and Strelka's brave adventure had blazed a trail for humans to follow, which just goes to show that it doesn't matter where you come from. If two little dogs from the streets of Moscow can make history, then perhaps you can too. World news. Dogs paved the way for first spaceman. On April 12, 1961, people all over the world listened in amazement at the news of the first man in space. So, if Belka and Strelka had never went to space, humans wouldn't know that it was possible to go and come back safely. So they made it possible and paved the way to have astronauts go into outer space and go discover the moon and other planets. The space race. In 1960, the year Belka and Strelka successfully orbited Earth, the United States and the Soviet Union were in the middle of a space race to see who could push the boundaries of space exploration furthest. Oh, did you know that? I didn't know that. Let's see. So in 1947, in the 1940s, both nations were working to send animals on missions to space. In 1947, American scientists launched the first living creatures into space, fruit flies. So the first animal to go to space was a fruit fly. And then in 1941, they sent up a monkey called Albert II. Unfortunately, he did not survive the mission. It was too dangerous for him. Between 1951 and 1965, Soviet scientists launched more than 50 dogs. They had to be small enough to fit in a spacecraft, weigh between 6 and 7 kilograms, which is about 13 to 15 pounds, and measured no more than 35.5 centimeters, which is about 14 inches long in height. Then in 1960, on board Belka and Strelka's flight in 1960, there were a range of living things, including 40 mice, a rabbit, 2 white rats, insects, and plants. So Belka and Strelka had some company when they went up to outer space. They had rabbits and mice and rats and insects and plants. The astronauts wanted to make sure that people would be able to survive outer space. In 1963, French scientists launched the first and only cat ever to be sent to space. Her name was Felicity. And by the 1970s, the space race had fizzled out, and in recent years, scientists from all around the world have worked together on missions to space. So finally, the nations weren't competing anymore. They decided to work together. Where exactly is space? Do you know where space is? Can you guess? Space is beyond the cloud and beyond the surface of the earth. But how far is that? Let's find out. Space is about 62 miles above the earth. There is an invisible line called the Kármán line. Anything crossing this line is officially in space. So we have to get 62 miles above the Kármán line, and then we're in space. So here's the space race. All the different animals that got to go to outer space are in these pictures. Cats and mice and dogs and monkeys and fruit flies. And these are all the people that got to go to outer space too. Let's see. 1960, Belka and Strelka. Then the first man in space was Yuri, and he went to space in 1961. And then the first woman in space went to space in 1963. Then the first men on the moon were Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin. They went in 1967. These were a long time ago, before you and I were even born. And then they sent a machine to the moon in 1971. Then they had another mission that went to the moon in 1975, the Apollo Soyuz test project. And then the first woman in space was Sally Ride in 1983. First permanently manned space station built was in 1986. And then building began on the International Space Station. Did you know that there's a space station up in outer space? There are always 6 astronauts who come from all over the world living on the International Space Station. So 6 people live up in outer space right now. And that was built in 1998. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to get the first humans on Mars. That would be super interesting, right? To live on Mars and not live on Earth. And that's the story of Belka and Strelka and all the other adventures of going to outer space. Did you guys enjoy that story? I really did. I had no idea that the first things to go to space were dogs, or fruit flies, or rats, or rabbits. I had no idea. I learned a lot from this book. How you have to be the right size and weight to go to space, and how when you come back from space and you go through the Earth's atmosphere, the spaceship catches on fire. I had no idea. What did you learn from this story? That is a really interesting fact, right? So now you know a little bit about outer space and about the first 2 dogs that went to outer space. Well, friends, until next time, bye! And parents, please don't forget to subscribe. Click the subscribe button and you and your little one can get first-time notifications of when we put up a new Storytime adventure video. Until next week, bye friends!